The Redevelopment Expert Exchange is a program of the Northern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center, and it was created in 2016 as a redevelopment expert sharing opportunity for West Virginia communities. This includes peer-to-peer exchanges, so site visits, workshops, consultations, where we have communities that are traveling from communities across the state to other parts of West Virginia to learn from each other and to learn about redevelopment strategies that they can implement in their own communities. Another aspect of this program are monthly webinars, which is what we're having today, and those include special topics on a number and a range of redevelopment topics, and those are based on things that we're hearing across the state and across the region and the nation, and the requests that we hear when we're working in communities across West Virginia. You can request an exchange, an in-person site visit by visiting our website, which is on your screen, and also you can suggest a webinar topic by contacting us using the contact information at that website as well. We are rounding out our 2016 webinar series this year. We have today's webinar, and then next month on November 29th we'll have Down by the River, Engaging Your Community in Riverfront Redevelopment, which will focus on work that's happening on the Monongahela River in Pittsburgh and across West Virginia, and features Nina Chase from River Life. In December, on a date to be determined, we'll focus on deal making for deal junkies, which will feature Pat Ford in the Northern Panhandle of West Virginia. This is a great topic that's been really popular at our state conference, and I think there'll be a lot to dive into at the conference. And with that, I have a couple of quick housekeeping items, and then I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. We are recording this webinar, and the slides and the recording will be available on our website after today, probably early next week. There's also a handout. If you click on the handouts part of your menu, you can see a PDF that's got some additional information on the cabin program, which you're going to hear some more about. And you can ask questions throughout the presentation, either through the questions box or the chat box. All of you are on mute to avoid any sort of audio issues, so you can ask your questions there, and we'll make sure to ask them as we go and to ask the questions as our speakers are talking. And with that, I'd like to introduce Herb Pettigene, who's the Brownfield Coordinator for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and he's going to start us off with some history on the cabin program, and I'll let him get set up, and then he'll take it from there.
Okay, is the screen showing up okay?
It is. You are all set.
Okay, very good. As Carrie mentioned, I'm Herb Pettigene. I'm the Brownfield Coordinator for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And Central Appalachia is made up of parts of 5 to 8 states and 3 different EPA regions. And unfortunately, we don't always cross these boundaries to talk to each other. Last week, I was at a meeting for the Region 4 coordinators, and regions may make sense administratively, but not necessarily environmentally. For example, Region 4 extends, from Kentucky down to Florida. And in Kentucky, at least eastern Kentucky, we're dealing with a lot of abandoned coal mine sites. Whereas in Florida, like one of their big problems is these dip tanks, where a couple of decades ago there was a problem with a tick-borne disease in cattle, and so they would build these troughs, fill them with an arsenic-based pesticide, and then run the cattle through them. And they're all over the place, and it's a major problem for them. Now, I can't give them much advice on how to deal with that, and they aren't particularly helpful with what to do with former mine sites. So what we needed was something with more focus, where we gather folks from a region with shared environmental issues, shared economic challenges, shared topography and the associated challenges. I'm thinking in particular the issues with infrastructure, trying to build infrastructure in the mountains, and shared demographics, where we're dealing largely with rural and small towns. So last September, we had the inaugural Central Appalachian Regional Brownfield Summit, and appreciate the West Virginia Brownfields Conference agreeing to have one day devoted to this regional summit. We had about 250 participants and some really great conversations going there. It's a chance for folks from the different regions and states to really talk about this common issue in this particular area. Besides those conversations, also developed some partnerships, and I know in Kentucky we're working with several of the groups that we met through the summit on some specific projects in our own states. But, you know, we didn't want it to be a one-shot deal. We wanted to establish something that would continue beyond the summit, and that's where we came up with the Central Appalachian Brownfields Innovation Network. This is a mechanism to keep that discussion going. And kind of brings to mind a saying from John Paul DeJoria, who's a successful businessman and has some interest in Appalachia. He was a funder and one of the founders of Grow Appalachia, which is an organization that helps deal with food insecurity and food deserts by promoting local food production in the region. And he said that success unshared is failure. Success unshared is failure. Well, Cabin is designed to be a place for us to share our successes and to learn from each other. And with that, I'm going to pass the discussion over to Patrick Kirby, who's the director for the Northern West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Center, and he's going to be talking about the specific design of Cabin and the three components by which we're going to be continuing this conversation and sharing our successes. Patrick?
Thanks. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate everybody being on the webinar today to roll out some of these new resources. So Cabin is a new resource, and what I'm going to do is walk through how you can use it in your Appalachian communities. First, we got a great history from Herb on how Cabin came to be, but what is it composed of? And so it's trying to share the benefits of sustainable redevelopment on both brownfields and formerly mined lands, which qualify for certain types of brownfields funding. What we're doing is trying to take all the redevelopment stakeholders and use three different areas, including the Redevelopment Expert Exchange, which Carrie talked about, and I'll explain a little more, the front porch, and as it relates to communicating with our neighbors and sharing information without necessarily having to be with them, and then the Campfire function, which is the events and the way we bring everyone together around to talk about our successes, actually our failures as well, which can turn into a success for someone else. So when we look at that, it took a lot of people to pull together these three different peers of Cabin, and so I'd like to just go through those partners before I get into more detail about the three different components. The Appalachian Regional Commission, Kentucky Brownfield Redevelopment Program, NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology's Technical Assistance to Brownfields Program, State of Tennessee, US EPA, the US General Services Administration, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, West Virginia Brownfields Assistance Centers, and the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection. You guys can all read that on your slide, but the reason I went through those names is you all know that it can be challenging pulling together a group of stakeholders and collaborators, and if you look at the area of Central Appalachia and then you compare that to this list of partners, it really covers a lot of ground, and that's why we're able to learn from each other and share those successes. So to dive in, now that you guys have heard all how we sort of put it all together, and let's go back to the redevelopment expert exchanges. So if you look at redevelopment experience that everyone has something different from the different areas that we're in. And so I guess what I would say is that you're going to take those leaders from across the region and connect them together. And it doesn't have to be, so we call it, and this was a big point of contention, is it who is the expert in this exchange? And it's not necessarily who you think it is, because you're learning from each other. And so we're allowing the different communities across Central Appalachia to learn best practices from their peers. So it's not necessarily consultants, it is taking one group that worked on, the example we use a lot is a train depot, and working on a train depot project, yes, there are different nuances and your project may be unique, but I would probably venture to say it's not unique, it's distinct, and you have some aspects in your community based on the reuse of that train depot. However, someone else in this region, based on the fact that we have a lot of great looking historic train depots, some of which have been abandoned, that we could learn from each other. And so you would, and during the redevelopment expert exchange, you would actually connect the folks in the community that had redeveloped it by having the folks that are working on that project, on their projects in their community, come see it, see what happened. And it's a deep dive. This isn't just a quick meeting. It normally is for a day, and it's going through the process. Where were the different funding sources, as everybody asked? What were the challenges that were faced? How was the community engaged? How did you get to success? And so it lends a lot of information that is very tangible and actionable. Actionable when the visiting community returns home and wants to continue to work on the project. So something everyone always likes to say is that it's sometimes the planets are just aligned. At the Brownfield Center, we really believe that it's not just how, it's the fact that someone aligned them. And guess what? It's probably one of you on the call that really pushed the stars together, the planets together at the right time. And it's not easy, and it takes more than one champion, but it's understanding how those planets were aligned. And so going to someone else who's actually pushed them together, it makes sure that when you're in your community and you've pushed the planets together, that you know when they're aligned, because sometimes you may not notice because you're working so hard. So in order to better model what a redevelopment expert exchange looks like, I'll give you the example of the city of Wellsburg. And they were interested in their riverfront. They have a beautiful riverfront on the Ohio River, but it was underdeveloped, and they wanted to see another community that had worked hard on its trail, because Wellsburg also has a rail trail that goes right through downtown. So they asked to come visit Morgantown. And it was also not just the city, but they were working on creating an urban renewal authority and working specifically on a brownfield. It's an old glass factory site that we refer to as Brook Glass, made beautiful ruby glass. And so they needed to understand, well, what else? So it's river development. Who else has a glass factory? It's amazing how all these things aligned. So Wellsburg had a glass factory sitting adjacent to a trail, which was a block away from the river. In Morgantown, you have a glass factory adjacent to a trail, a little less than a block from the river. So we put together, the Wellsburg folks put together their own team, and then we set up meetings in Morgantown with the former mayor who had actually been involved in the trail creation during his tenure, as well as the Land Use and Sustainable Development Law Clinic, who was actually had a meeting with the Urban Renewal Authority to talk to them about a number of things, the open government requirements, other aspects of creating an urban renewal authority to make sure they had everything legal. And actually, we also pulled in a city planner from an adjacent city, Fairmont, at the time, who also has a rail trail, not a glass factory, but other sites, and riverfront development happening. And so they didn't just come all sit in a conference room all day. What they did is they came down and they connected first with the law clinic, and then we walked on the trail together and conversed and had, everybody had their own questions, and then we met up afterwards to do follow-up questions in a meeting. And that was pretty significant. If we go to the next slide and look at all the different things that were shared, I talked about setting up and running the URA, the need for a comprehensive plan in that community as a requirement, as well as how the rail trail development actually happened. It's significant in terms of not just the existing trail, but then if they wanted to do additional expansions or offshoots, what had worked on the riverfront in terms of attracting businesses to the riverfront, in terms of dealing with anything from, there are obviously, in Wellsburg, there's some flooding issues, there are other things, but how do you deal with that recreational piece? And making sure that it's all benefiting not just the city/citizens, but those business owners that can also drive this downtown riverfront economy. So they all met for about, I think it was a 4 or 5 hour day. So a long day, and that was just in Morgantown, let alone the drive down, but that was helpful. And they took it back, and so if you look in Wellsburg now in terms of outcomes and tangible pieces, and you ask the members of that Urban Renewal Authority the impact that this had, we can quantify the impact in terms of the URA, looking at specific legal components of their actual formation, and so getting not just Wellsburg actually started a comprehensive planning process, and then from there they had their redevelopment plan created. So the Urban Renewal Authority had the specific kinds of authorities they needed to address the blight in the area and some of these former properties, including brook glass. It also drove them to connect, and there's a couple different trail projects happening in the Northern Panhandle right now, and the city is an active stakeholder in those. So those are just two of the things that I can that are clear connections, and they've maintained. I don't think Wellsburg and Morgantown have to talk on a regular basis, but they have that context and they have that ability to advise and reach out. I know the Land Use Law Clinic is still active in Wellsburg, and it also takes the projects, which was really started with a conversation about brook glass and how the Seneca Center in Morgantown was redeveloped, and the other glass factory sites in Morgantown could potentially be redeveloped, and how that how Wellsburg could learn from that. It turned into so much more. It went beyond brownfields, and now it's the farther economic development. So that was definitely positive. So that's one example of an expert exchange. The other component, one of the other two components of Cabin, is an online platform to allow you to, in case you don't have that time or the travel doesn't work, that you could actually share questions amongst the region with service providers, peers, and some of the agencies, and request project advice or information on a program, and sharing information related to redevelopment. And we are in the process of developing the front porch. The concept of the front porch came in similar to the way Cabin did, is that a cabin in Appalachia has a lot of very positive connotations. People like to go visit. They spend time in the cabin. They take care of their cabins, in which you have to do with the network. But you also, in this region, known for front porch sitting and talking to your neighbors and sharing that information and advice. So that's how this platform sort of came to be. And the idea is that it will be functioning on an opt-in basis, so you can join online and you can post questions and respond and get responses in real time, similar to other forums, but we're actually going to be able to capture these frequently asked questions or some of the different questions specifically that would apply to larger groups. And we've seen this approach, this network forum approach, work well in some other contexts where you can share information this way. And so we are still beta testing it to make sure we can get everything squared away, so no one, you know how it goes with technology, but so we will launch this by the end of this year, and you guys can participate in that as well. The third component of Cabin is what we're calling Campfire, and again, it may seem a little hokey, but when we were thinking through Cabin, the concept of bringing everybody together to share information, similar to seasonal to say share ghost stories, but share this information and pass it down so that you learn from it, and then you could share it beyond. And so what we're doing is we're building capacity in the Central Appalachian region by making connections. So we have these webinars as one example. Herb referenced the regional summit, which was a conference that's held, as well as we're in the process of developing workshops so that are more close to home and on specific topics. So I'll just swing back to some of the things when we hosted the Central Appalachian Regional Brownfield Summit as part of the West Virginia Brownfields Conference. We've really got a broader range of folks from the states, of all the folks that I mentioned as partners, as well as those organizations, and some. We had folks from North Carolina as well, folks from Georgia, which is a little far south, but we'll definitely still claim them, and Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And there were multiple interactive sessions, and so that's where the beginning of this energy and momentum comes from, and will continue. So I think you guys may have some questions on exactly how to get involved in Cabin, so I thought I would just go through some specific upcoming opportunities. First is you can sign up for the listserv, and we'll send you updates as different opportunities arise. The redevelopment expert exchanges in 2017 will continue, and that means you can either suggest your idea for an expert exchange for your organization or someone you know, and you can email that to info@brownfieldsinnovation.com. And I would really encourage you, if your organization even could host an exchange, or if you had an idea, to do that, because we have current funding to actually, we are in the process of working with 6 different, so I guess 12 different groups on exchanges over the next 2 to 3 months, and we are lining them up beyond that, and so we need all the ideas that we can get. So it covers travel and related expenses. We have, so far they've been all day trips, but we'd be, depending on where you're looking to go, think of it one topically. So you're working on, I'd use the glass factory and the train depot already. Say you're working on a site that may have a coal tipple or an old school, or a number of other things, or you could look at it more geographically related to your demographics. Hey, you're interested in something in another river valley that has similar characteristics to your community, and they're doing something you like, and you would like to go learn how they do it. If you don't know where to go, when I mention geographically, we can help match you up with someone who has similar issues or similar opportunities, I guess I would say, and some that we tend to see a large range of projects and case studies, and have a network of interested cities and towns that might be able to make the connection. As well as keep your eyes peeled as we launch Front Porch. We would really like the folks on this call to participate in Front Porch, both with asking questions and answering questions. You have a lot of knowledge, you have a lot of experience, and so if someone asks you, or asks on Front Porch how to do something, just by sharing what you think is your everyday knowledge or your something that's simple, it may save them hours, days, weeks, even months on some projects. And we all know that sometimes we run into a wall and we just can't figure out how to get over that wall, and somebody can walk out of the blue from around the wall and tell you, hey, if you just come this way, you could just walk around it, and it could really save a project. And each project that succeeds in a community lends itself to building the information needed to complete the next project. And we all know to watch those dominoes fall. And if we don't help each other sharing this information to solve these problems, not only will the dominoes not fall, they may fall in the opposite direction and be detrimental to communities, as they don't feel like they get overwhelmed with some of the challenges that are there. So that's where we're headed with Cabin. Please feel free to contact Herb, Carrie, or myself at any time with questions on it. The New Jersey Institute of Technology and Elizabeth Limbrick and Sean Vroom have been key on this process as well. So if you need to contact NJIT tab, that'd be great. And so now I'd like to open it up to any questions you might have.
All right, thanks to both of our presenters. We haven't gotten any questions just yet, so I'll give it a couple minutes in case you guys are formulating something. In the meantime, you can see, I'll go ahead and open up we do have a brochure in the handout section that you can see. You can click on and download. It's just got some additional information on the program overall, and then each of the components. And some of that information is also available at the website, which you saw on an earlier slide. So you can learn more and get some contact information on that brochure and at the website. Herb, was there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think Patrick gave a very good summary of what we're attempting to do with Cabin and the three components. So just hope folks jump in with suggestions, or if they have issues, use this to reach out, and we keep that conversation going that we started at the summit.
Great. Well, thanks a lot to our speakers and to everyone for joining us. If we don't have any questions, then we'll go ahead and close. I will send out the webinar early next week so that you can access it later and share it with whomever you like. And you can view past webinars from the Exchange on our website, which you'll get a link to as well. And I hope to see you all at our November and December webinars. Thanks a lot.